Hey, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Technology, Cybersecurity, and Risk Exposure. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Zuli Marabona, Executive Vice President with KW Property Management. I'm a partner with the organization, and I am delighted to be joining you here today. I am joined by my colleague, Alex Martin, along with our expert panelists in today's webinar. Hi, everyone. So before we dive into the session, let's talk about a few housekeeping items. The session will last approximately 1 hour. We try to keep ourselves true to that time. Sometimes we run out of time. And we're going to open up a Q&A chat. Please, we love the participation. We always have great conversation and questions. So we're going to open up the chat and feel free to, as we move along, to ask questions. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time. And also, please, it's important to understand that this session, along with any other session or our monthly webinars, are intended for informational purposes only. And you should ask your professional vendors and or your accounting or legal advice for your associations. We recommend, again, that anything you learned here today that you please discuss with your attorneys or professionals at your association. And so before I turn it over to Alex, I just want to emphasize again what a great session we're prepared to kick off here for you today. And to think about cybersecurity and technology, it's more than just the terminology itself. It's really to talk about how we protect you, the resiliency of technology today, and also understanding the impact that protecting our data can have on our day-to-day lives, on the associations we oversee, and beyond. So again, our pleasure. And Alex, take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Grab your lunch, sit back, enjoy. I'm really excited about this session here. It is what, 12 o'clock? And open up that Q&A
That
thing,
time.
answer all the questions because I've been doing it myself. While we were waiting here, I'm like picking their brains because I'm so excited about this session. This is the world we're going into right now. So it's really important that we start focusing here, our association start focusing on best practices. And then joining us today is we Reggie Andre, but he goes by Andre, right? From Mark Solvers. He's the founder and CEO, and our one and only Octavio from he's the man that controls our infrastructure. Without him, we are no one.
Very
Let's
important.
start,
Very important for us.
very much. So let's start with Andre today. Can you talk about a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you to the entire team for having me. So my technology career began back in 2002, just doing regular computer repair updates for, your grandmas and just helping them with their computers. And since then, we've evolved our business model into IT support and cybersecurity. Back in 2003, we started in the condominium industry, and we have really grown from there, helping with startups and managing computer systems, all of the technology for association and HOAs.
Amazing.
Um,
Octavio?
I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I started my career in the late 90s. I was working at a call center. And I quickly moved into an IT role where I grew to become a Unix system administrator, writing shell scripts, keeping servers alive. It wasn't glamorous, but it taught me something important early on, and that's that technology only matters if the people depending on it can actually use it. And that idea has guided me in everything I've done since. In the 2000s, I moved into IT management, running a service desk, overseeing desktop and telephony teams. That phase taught me the human side of IT, how to lead, how to manage escalations without losing my mind, and how to build processes that scale. We implemented ITIL practices before it was fashionable. Now it is very fashionable. And we quickly learned that a well-run service desk is actually a competitive advantage. Then after that, came what I call my build era. I joined a company by the name of Ultimate Software. It was a software company. I spent a decade and a half there, about 18 years in total, growing from managing corporate infrastructure services all the way to leading a team responsible for deploying and integrating IT systems across the globe. And then after Ultimate Software, stepped into a broader engineering role, leadership role, managing teams of network engineers across global locations, overseeing everything from firewalls, security architecture, load balancing, and a little bit of everything, which was it was fun. And then where I am now is a different kind of challenge, a smaller scale, but a higher complexity, is what I call it. Because I've joined a KWPMC about a year and a half ago, and I've leveraged all of my knowledge and experiences to try to help KWPMC become a better company, and to also uh, better support the needs of our customers. So that's a little bit about myself.
Amazing story, Octavio. And
Thank you,
thanks for
Octavio.
yeah, thanks for carving
Lucky
out
to
some
have you.
time. Yeah, we're very happy to have you. And thanks for carving out some time, both of you today, to chat with us. We have some poll questions we're going to send out because we want to get some information from everyone out there. If you can please answer those poll questions, it'd be great.
All right, they are online right now, so we're going to take the
Yeah.
few minutes as Alex mentioned.
Yeah, and I'll read them out as you're answering them. I mean, question number one is, have you or anyone you know ever been hacked?
That's a
Are
tough one,
you?
right? We
Yeah,
all want to say no, but we know that
Mhm.
that's not always right.
correct. And are you using the same password across multiple accounts? That one is, you'd be surprised
Mhm.
what we find out.
We're about to find out, aren't we?
Yes. And how important is technology in your day-to-day life? In your day-to-day life. Sorry. And then, does your association have cyber incident response plan? That's a real good one.
Mhm.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And Andre has some amazing stories here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Continue answering those if you haven't answered them yet, because it's great information. We need that. We want to help you with what this world is leading to. Andre, can you tell us a bit about your stories, what's going on with AI and cybersecurity and what you're seeing out there in the market right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So just like how we're all using ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, Claude, and everything like that, the other side of that is the bad guys are also using it. So just like how we're writing emails to our clients or rewriting emails, the bad guys are going to chat bad GPT, I like to call it, and now they're sending out phishing emails. But instead of doing it one at a time, they're now using AI to do it at scale. So if you guys remember back in the 2000s, you had the Nigerian prince and he had all of the typos and things like that. Now the AI is able to say, write me a phishing email for this scenario based on this industry and make it look very convincing. And then with AI, they're able to then be able to send that out to thousands of thousands, not just a click of a button, a bot they call it. And we have now seen cyber attacks grow so much more because the bad guys are using the technology against us. And unfortunately, the bad guys are always one step ahead of the good guys, so we're always playing defense.
Wow. Wow. Octavio, what are you seeing out there?
So we're seeing a lot of following on what Andre just mentioned or shared. We're seeing a lot of voice cloning. So that's the one that's really kind of shocking a lot of individuals. I've heard of stories where a mother will receive a phone call and the daughter's voice is being cloned, and the daughter's asking the mother to send money to a person who is assisting the daughter with an issue. It could be a broken car, a flat tire, etc. And the mother, of course, will follow the directions. So we've seen, voice cloning. We still see a lot of executive and CEO fraud. where basically, you get anywhere from an email to a WhatsApp, notification with a lot of information, a lot of detailed information around the company or either potential new clients or existing clients that the company supports. And in addition to that, again, the voice component of it. And then the one that I see that continues to grow, or the fastest growing one, is what they call deep fake vishing, which is also associated with the voice part of of trying to get someone to respond. And what they'll do is you'll receive a phone call and you'll be prompted with a question. For example, you'll get a phone call and they'll ask, am I speaking to Octavio? And I'll say, yes, you are. Or yes, are you living in this location? Anything that would prompt me to say, yes, I am. Yes, you are. And they'll record that and then leverage that to commit all kinds of cybersecurity crimes and fraud. So.
And absolutely, and I'm not trying to give the bad guys ideas here, but you can also look at it where if someone knows a famous person or someone who has some type of their voice is already it's out on YouTube, for example, an influencer,
Pre-recorded, right?
and they can now take that voice, put it into the AI, call the front desk at the association and say, "Hey, John, this is David. I'm going to have my friend come over. I'm not home. Go ahead and let him up straight to the unit." Like that's only a matter of time until we even get to that aspect. Right now, we're seeing a lot of digital, but even on the cybersecurity side, there's a security side aspect to it as well.
Wow. Well, to take a pause, Alex, it looks like we've got some of the answers on our poll questions. You want to take a few seconds to
Yeah, very
read them?
concerning, right? 72% of the people have been hacked.
It's very telling.
72%. What what best practices out there right now, gentlemen, are out there not to get hacked? What is it? What is right now that's happening that you see in real time that people are allowing to be hacked? Is there
Well,
emails going out? Is there a text message? Is the voice that you're talking about I just what is right now, what are like the top three, four ways, easiest way to get someone to get hacked?
a lot of times when we think about hacking, we think of like this
Yeah.
big mega room and it's 100 people and they're going. We're letting them literally right inside the front door. We're not changing our passwords. The same password that's for our Microsoft is the same password for our LinkedIn, which is the same password for our banking. And that if one of those providers get hacked, all they have to now do is take that username and password and just paste that over. And just one more is two-form factor authentication. Like there should be no reason in today's world why you don't have two-form factor. What that just basically means is even if your username and your password has been compromised, the bad guy has it, they don't have your phone. And because they don't have your phone, they can't go into that extra step. And I would say it would be probably more than 60% of the hacks that we see out there. If it was a basic two-form factor authentication, there would have been at least some type of defense there, and it wouldn't have been the situation that it is.
So I just received a one of my board members sent me that he uses every time he logs in, he uses a text SMS to receive a code to be able to log
Mhm.
into his is that what you're talking about, or is there a different way? Because he says I receive a text message code every time I log into any of my emails, financial institutions. It's the way I use it to secure my uh, information.
So text messages is great. So I'm not, but there are better ones where it's app based. So if you have the text and maybe your bank hasn't caught up to that, then that's better than nothing. And I don't want to put on, a tinfoil hat and seem like the crazy cyber guy, but there are ways that you can spoof cell phone numbers and stuff like that. But I will just answer it at it's better than nothing. But if you can get the authenticator app, that's a little better.
Okay.
But to address the point that you brought up, Reggie, previously, that 28%, just back to the poll questions, 28% of our audience is still using the same password across multiple accounts, right? So it sounds like 69% of you are at least utilizing multiple passwords, right? But there's some work to be done there, right, for security purposes. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. And then, in the question of how important is technology in your day-to-day life, 6% answered minimal, just they use it for basic emails and texts. 31% use it for social media, business needs, text, and emails, but 63% highly use it for multiple use cases, platforms, and various complex needs. So I mean that number every year is going to keep increasing till we hit 90, 95, 100% because the world is changing. I've noticed that. All
Yeah.
right. So Octavio, what are you seeing out there?
One thing,
What to get into the go ahead.
yeah, one thing I wanted to mention and to complement what Andre was saying in regards to the two-factor authentication and leveraging app-based authenticators, right? The Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator, uh, to make sure that you have that second layer of security and to validate that it is you. I can tell you that a few years ago, I started receiving messages, SMS messages, basically with links that would allow whoever is trying to hack into my system to basically log in. And if it wasn't for the fact that I had, MFA installed or activated, they would have hacked in. Now, going back to what Andre said, that it is true, SMS, MFA is better than nothing. But again, like you mentioned, the SIM swapping, SIM cloning, they can do all of that with the phone. So it would be better to have the app-based authenticator. Now, as an individual that uses a multitude of systems, and because I work in technology and I try to whatever I implement at work, I try to implement at home. One thing that I'm sure many of you are thinking about is how do I maintain all of these passwords, right? One of the reasons why many of us use the same password in multiple systems is because it's easy. It's simpler. So there are tools out there that you can purchase that allow you to store your passwords, right? They're password managers, and they're very, very secure, and they're very easy to use. They're not complex at all. So I strongly suggest that you use one of these password managers, such as 1Password, Dashlane, yeah, and there's a few other ones. On my phone, I personally have two of them, one that I use with the family and one for myself. But my favorite one is Keeper. So I've been using Keeper already for a few years. I was introduced to it by the security team at the previous company I worked for, and I have all kinds of passwords there. And what I've done is I created a family vault that allows my family to also save their passwords and Keeper. And it made it easier for my wife, who was keeping her passwords in a notepad on her phone, to
hmm.
now use this tool to store the passwords. So I just wanted to add how important it is to use MFA, but also how there are tools out there to make it easier for us to maintain, our 10, 20 passwords so that we don't have to worry about writing it on a piece of paper or keeping it stored in Notepad on our phone.
Octavio, you excellent point. We actually had a question online that I think
Mhm.
you've addressed, but just to elaborate, I'm going to go ahead and ask it just in case you want to change the answer or elaborate a little bit. What do you think about the safety and security of auto-generated passwords that you save on your computer in a file?
So I can tell you that at the beginning, when Microsoft and Google first started doing that, I wasn't too what's the word I'm looking for? I wouldn't use it a lot. But now they they've secured it. Now they're in a good place now, so you can certainly save it uh, there. Again, there's different layers of security, right? So if you ask me, if you're logging into a site that you're not maintaining any kind of PII data, personal identifiable information, meaning like social security numbers, bank accounts, all the stuff that's important, then I would strongly suggest you don't save that information on your browser, that you save it on some kind of password manager. But now, if you're logging into, I don't know, one of these pet delivery sites, pet food or pet products, then maybe you can do it on, because you're not gonna, the impact is a lot less. So, and maybe not even there because you'll probably have saved credit card information in that location. But if you're accessing, I don't know, any site that where you're not maintaining any personal information, then yeah, you can save it on your browser. But I would suggest that you save it on a password manager and go through that discomfort of opening up your password manager and typing it in. And many of these password managers have a plugin that you can plug into your browser and it'll fill the password for you. So I hope that
Great.
answers the question.
That's great advice because I think a lot of things that we do in the industry, we implement into our personal lives, right? All those best practices, everything
Right.
we learned, because
Great
we're
point.
dealing with it every day. Andre, what do you do on in your personal to store passwords that to protect yourself and your family?
No, yeah, absolutely. We have a password manager, and like you said, for your family.
Yeah.
So what my wife and I have is we call it an I love you folder. Because if something ever happens to me, the last thing she or I want to deal with is trying to figure out how do I get access to the bank account and 401ks, et cetera, et cetera. So that's even just a best practice to do for yourself because it's very difficult. Actually had someone reach out to me because there was a death in the family and nobody knew the person's iPhone password and try calling Apple for that. They're not gonna, even with a power of attorney death certificate, you're just calling, a rock. They're not going to answer. So it's very important, even on the personal side, to have a password manager. You can even make it where, okay, if you don't log in for more than X amount of months, it can automatically send an email to the next of kin, if you want to call it that. So password manager, but unfortunately, what I still see is people have an Excel spreadsheet. I cringe, and like you would think, okay, if you're gonna have an Excel spreadsheet, call it like, put a dot 1 2 or something. No, they call it passwords. So like the bad guy gets in, he hits the Windows key and just types in passwords, and he just sees the whole list. So in 2026, we got to do better. Let's get away from the spreadsheets. Let's get away from keeping it on our phones, and let's use a password manager.
Great
Great
advice.
point. Alex, the last poll question
Mhm.
is an important one, right? It's does your association have a cyber incident response plan? And 48% of us said no. But before we answer that, I think I want to go back a little bit and rewind our track a little on um, just talking to probably the majority of our audience today, which are probably either managers or board of directors, right? Whether you're a self-managed board or you are supported by a management team, the fact of the matter is you have equipment on site that belongs to the association, right? And we want to talk a little bit about how to best support the equipment that you have on site. That's one area that I really want to focus on. And then the other one would be the risk exposure of just the equipment in our association's softwares and systems in conjunction with the management companies. So risk assessments. So I think I'd like to understand either Octavio or Reggie, whomever would like to maybe kick that off, is the importance of conducting regular risk assessments. Like how do they know? I mean, how do they help prevent some of that? Like, what should associations be doing now or in the near future, right, to help prevent some preventing or identifying vulnerabilities?
Yeah, I can start in October. I'll tee it up to you. But one of the common misconceptions that we see when we go to a property for, for a proposal or something like that is, oh well, my management company is taking care of everything. And I'm always like, no, no, no. Yes, you may have a corporate email. They may provide software or websites and so forth like that. But these are association computers. You are in charge of having your antivirus. That closet over there in IT, that firewall, that belongs to the association because the management company, they have their entire team making sure they're doing a good job protecting their systems. But if you get a virus or what is called a ransomware, which is when you open up your computers and it's locked, that's on you. So first thing I think is just education for the board to know that hey, there's a difference. Management company, whoever, or bank, they're going to do their job in protecting their system, but then it's the association's responsibility to protect their internal systems.
Yes, and I fully agree. One and very important component of managing risk that Andre touched on is training.
Mhm.
Anytime a new employee comes into the environment, they should have uh, some kind of type of training material, almost as a reminder that what to look for, what to expect when someone is hacking, right? If I call someone and tell them I need this bank account information ASAP because I need to make a payment, well, that should be a concern because that's not normally the way it works, right? There is a process. And tied with the training, the consistent training, not only when they're onboarding, but also, periodically. Um, there's also the policy component. A lot of times, if policy is not in place, well, users will do whatever they like, and maybe they're not supposed to be doing something. So the reinforcement of policies around how to treat this equipment, making sure, to Andre's point, that it's being patched. Laptops are being patched. I know many of us get the alert that says, new patches are available, or your machine has been patched, or etc., and you need to reboot, and we continue to delay it, well, you're exposing yourself. Like a lot of times when Microsoft, particularly Microsoft, does that is because they have critical patches that need to be installed that are currently being used by hackers to break into machines. So employee training and policy are I think two key components of managing risk.
Octavio, you're absolutely right. The training is big. I can't tell you how many times from your department I get those text messages and emails and just a test to see if I fall for it. And I think everybody knows that if you fall for it, then you got to go retrain again. And then I got to go spend time online learning why I made that mistake, which I think is phenomenal because
Yeah.
it's every email, every text that I receive now with a link or phishing, whatever they're trying to do. I'm like, could this be you guys testing? Could it be a real hacker? And I know we do this to our whole organization because we're developing that culture, that mindset of anything you
Yes.
press on can be very dangerous, right?
Right.
Yes.
Look
So,
out for threats.
and I fell for it in the beginning. You haven't caught me. It's been over like a year, I think, right?
I
Year and a half. So you haven't caught me
think
yet.
it's time for another test, Alex.
Yeah, now
Yeah.
watch today after we hang up. I'm gonna get my first email or text.
And
So yeah, I think it's
especially
amazing to develop that mindset, that culture in any organization, in your families, everywhere. Just don't click on things when they're sent to you.
Yeah, and especially in associations where you could have a high turnover in certain positions. We had an example, for example, there was a lifestyle director at a very high-end condominium, and they're accustomed to paying the bills for residents. So dry cleaner comes in, resident may not have the time. Hey, you have my card on file, which is a different story, but go ahead and pay that. But then the resident's email got hacked. They used the AI to read all of the emails and said, "Oh, okay, there's a relationship here with the lifestyle director and this person that I hacked." And they then said, "Hey, Suzanne, my grandkids are coming. I need you to please go to Walgreens and get one of those, money, green dot money cards
Mm.
and scratch off the code.
Wow.
I'm good for it. I'm going to go ahead and pay you back when I come in, but I really want to surprise them. And she fell for it because she was trying to do her job and going over and beyond for the resident. And she dished out like it was like about $400, and she
Oh
dished it
goodness.
out and she lost it.
Oh goodness.
Wow. Well, I mean, as we look here, over 80% don't have either are unsure or don't have an incident response plan. You and I were talking, Andre, about an issue you had in a building where they hacked into some elevator systems or whatever. Can you talk a little bit
Yeah,
about that? 'Cause I think people need to know that because there's a lot of
yeah,
people here that
absolutely.
I'm looking at
Uh,
that live in high rises, and
yeah,
it's interesting.
yeah. So a couple of years ago, there was a condominium high end in Hallandale Beach,
Hmm.
and their access control system got ransomware. So when the security director came in front of his computer, he needed to program a fob, and he noticed that the program to program the fob wasn't working. And there was a note that says, "Your computer has been ransomed, and if you don't pay us in X amount of days, we're going to destroy all your data." They called the access control company. "Hey, this is happening. We need you to restore from the backup." Access control said, "We're not your IT company. We don't do backups." Then that condo called the IT company. "No, we don't do access control. Why would we back up access control?" So you had this. In the meantime, residents were trying to use their fob to get into an elevator. They couldn't. They were trying to come into the driveway with the sticker on the side of the car. That was blocked. So now the association had to pay for 24/7 security to man the entrance where the guardhouse, the gate is. And this is one of those buildings that the elevator goes straight into unit. So they had to have a security guard in each cab. And in all of this time, they had cybersecurity insurance. And guess what happened? The policy in the insurance says you must maintain your systems with the latest operating systems, updates, and so forth. And as the insurance was starting to come into with their forensics guys, they say, "Wait, wait, wait. Why is this computer running Windows 7 still?" Which is a very old operating system. And the insurance company said, "Hey, association, thanks for paying the cyber insurance policy for the last 10 years. We really appreciate your premium, but we're going to deny you." And
Oh,
they end up
Wow.
having to do a special assessment to recoup all of that. It was a horrible situation, and then we came in to help clean up and so forth like that. But that's it, and I see it all the time. The buildings have older computers. They're not maintaining them. They're not doing the updates, and it's sometimes it's the mentality like, "Oh well, I have insurance." Well, just like for car insurance, you don't that doesn't mean you drive 100 miles an hour because you have car insurance. So it's the same concept. It's very important to make sure that these systems are maintained.
Wow, that was actually Anthony over in Miami Beach. He was asking that question. What are the things to look for in cyber insurance, and is it worth it?
Yes, absolutely worth it, but it's as equal as worth it to make sure that a cybersecurity, and there's a difference between IT and cybersecurity. IT is the
Mhm.
guy, "Hey, my printer's not working," and things like that. But cybersecurity is another level, and they're doing, a lot more in the back end, monitoring the systems and so forth.
Wow. So with all this information out there, and I'll tell you, I know we manage a lot of associations, a lot of information. Where is all these associations data stored, and who has access to it? How do we protect our clients?
So we leverage what is called an Azure environment, a cloud-based environment. Azure is a product that is sold or offered by Microsoft, and that's where we maintain our information, our systems, our data, our accounts information. Any of our property managers, any of our staff, even our corporate, any of their domain accounts, emails, access to Teams, Microsoft Word, where their documentation that they create and manage and interact with, all of that is being saved on the cloud. So and that's on the Microsoft side. We also use some other internal uh core platforms such as, Vanica, which our teams use for operations and financials, Nexus, which is, leverage for payments. Those are also cloud-based. One of the advantages of having this data on the cloud is that any of the transmissions that occur from the device, from a user's device over to the systems that live in the cloud, they're all encrypted. There's also, we spoke about MFA earlier. In our environment in KWPMC, it is a requirement to have a multi-factor authentication set up to be able to log into any of these systems. Um, and also, we do have some other legacy systems that do live in a data center down in downtown Miami. It's called the NAP, Network Access Point, or it has a different name. But the point I'm trying to make is a NAP is kind of like if you talk about data centers, there's usually your standard data centers, and there's the data centers that connect countries or regions. So we have one down here in downtown Miami that connects the United States. Is one of the data centers that connects the United States to the rest of Latin America. The reason I'm bringing that up is because it is, basically from a data center perspective, it's much more secure. The standards are higher, and then the availability of the data center is much better than you would get out of a smaller data center in a remote area. So those are the environments that our data lives in, and you know we have MFA, we have all kinds of security controls in place. We're audited multiple times throughout the year to make sure that we have we're mentioning policies, that we have policies, that we're doing training. We also have internal processes that we do on a regular basis to identify inconsistencies in the environments, right? Let's say, users that are not part of any access groups. Well, that's, something that needs to be looked at. Or we have access groups that have no membership, so we need to clean that up. And little things to that extent. We also use Defender from Microsoft as part of one of the Azure products, and that is used to manage and interact with the devices that are being used by our employees. It'll alert us of any inconsistencies in the environment. Give you a perfect example. If Defender identifies a user account, a KWPMC user account, attempting to log in multiple times and failing, and attempting different methods of logging in, and the source of this attempt changes, it'll trigger an alert. And then there's a process we have in place where we reach out to the property manager or to the user directly and try to validate that event. So just a few examples.
And I think that's
Amazing.
important. Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead,
No, I was
Andre.
going to say that's important because, as Octavio mentioned, we're talking about layers and layers and layers. So think of it as an onion. And that's when you talk about cybersecurity, it's just that. Because yes, there are ways to bypass the 2FA. There may be ways to bypass Defender, but the goal in cybersecurity is you want to limit the blast radius. So even if they got in a little, they can just do a little, because we can do everything. We can have the best firewall, the best shiny tools, but again, the bad guys are always ahead of the good guys. There's what is called 0 day, where basically there's a flaw in the system, and we can talk about that as well, where even the manufacturer doesn't even know about the flaw yet. So the idea is to have different layers of security, and if they get in one, they can only get in a little, but they couldn't go to the next level. Go ahead, Alex. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Julie.
Well, I wanted to scale it and thank you, because I think, Octavio, it's important for our audience to understand just how seriously management companies and other institutions like ours take the work that we do and protecting the data that we are charged to protect. And it's also good to scale it down, Reggie. And I think we should spend a few minutes really because, for board, this is a very overwhelming topic, but it's a topic that's talked about on a day-to-day basis. And just technology on its own, right now, and just what's happening in the world around us today is moving very quickly. It's moving quicker than a lot of us can keep up with, right? And so I want to spend a few minutes before our session is up talking about just the overview of the evolving technology and what's happening, right? So what are we seeing and how some of the exposure and the risks that are around us is impacting, right? So I don't want the whole session to get away from us without touching on that, but if we could break it down, everything that we've said today and kind of break it down in more simple terms for our viewers today to say at minimum, and you touched on that right now, Reggie, where you said the layers that you should have. To me, one of the items that I take away are some policies where you have multiple layers of approval and authentication on a personal level, but even on a professional level for your associations, like just 5 or 10 takeaway points that if you walk away with anything, you walk away understanding that we've got some best practices for you, for your associations to follow.
Absolutely. So we're talking training, as mentioned. Let's create that culture. Let's once a quarter, just, hey, everybody, MGM was on the news the other day, the casino, hotel in Las Vegas, because someone called in acting as if they were IT and they tricked that person into now
My
giving them
goodness.
access to the computer. So IT is never going to tell you to go to TeamViewer or Log Me In or any of those websites to get access. They already have access. So if we can create that culture in the company, if we can make sure that we have, and just let's make sure the computers are being updated. Let's make
Right, very
sure,
important.
yes, let's make sure the back end, a lot of times we'll walk into these associations and it's like spaghetti and it's like all of these wires
Clean.
and stuff like that, and nobody's touched it. And since 2005, it's been that same router from Best Buy. Let's put a line item in the budget to always reevaluate these type of technologies every 3 to 5 years and do a refresh.
And backup of data, if you're not working with a management company, right, that your data is being backed up because there are properties out there that are on their own that you have some sort of proper backup.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to because I think this circles back to the whole, at the beginning of our conversation around risk.
Mm.
Um, one suggestion I'd make is that anytime you're trying to identify risk, when you start, it just looks unreachable, right? There's too much out there. I don't know where to start. Personally, I think the first thing you do is you inventory. You inventory your digital assets. You identify your email accounts, if they're personal or work related, banking, financial accounts, um, social media profiles, where you're storing your data. Is it out on the cloud? Is it locally on a machine? The devices in the environment that you have, your phones, your tablets, your laptops, desktops, and that's kind of like at the foundational level. And then you take it to the next level, right? So, going back to if you have a laptop, then you start identifying, how am I securing this laptop? How do I hold myself responsible for making sure that I'm doing the best I can with the knowledge I have to make sure that this laptop or this phone or this device is being secured. And then, going back to the email accounts and the banking accounts and social media, 99% of the of I was going to say banking, but any institution out there, any product, any company out there that provides a service will have an MFA option, some kind of multi-factor, either SMS or through a tool or whatever. Make sure you leverage that. Um, and then the next piece is to try to figure out um, what happens? What do I do if this laptop stops working today? And that's at the simplest scenario. But what do I do if somebody hacks his laptop? Like the example that Andre was providing earlier in regards to what happened with the elevators and access, you know, and then you have a plan because what happens once you start asking those questions, then you start figuring out, oh, who's my contact information? Who do I go to? What do I do next? What information do I need to provide? And then you start, it's a little bit of a rabbit hole, but you'll get to a point where you're pretty good. And then once you have all of that documented and you create your checklist, then you should perform, you know, the exercise of going through it, right? So let's say Jeff works at the front desk, and Jeff's responsibility based on your incident response plan is to perform X, Y, and Z. Well, pick a day where you're gonna, just like you do fire alarms, just
Mhm.
like right before our hurricane season, there's a checklist that you have and things that you do. You should do the same thing for technology related assets. So I just wanted to bring that up. It might seem like it's a lot, but if you start just at the bottom level of just inventorying and trying to understand what you have, then you can start building and eventually have a pretty robust incident response plan.
Excellent point. Thank you, Octavio.
Can we talk about AI? We just recently took over a self-managed building, and there was a lot of things that were not being done at this property, which they were highly exposed. Even me, that I'm not the technology guru, I realized, oh my God. But the manager was telling me that they were putting all the data into free chat
Yeah.
GPT of all the residents, phone numbers, emails,
Oh
information
my
to
goodness.
do stuff with it for communications and stuff like that. Can you talk a little bit about that? What's happening when people are using the paid or the free AI systems out there, and they're putting data of residents of their ages, their birthdays, what's happening? I hear it's not very positive.
Steve Jobs once says, if the product is free, you are the product.
There you go.
My goodness, exactly. Enough
So,
said, I suppose.
yes, yes. And I've seen the same thing where it was an association, very high profile people are living there. And the assistant manager was really trying to do a very neat project. Like and with the AI, something that would have taken her 4 hours was she was able to do it in a couple of minutes. But the problem with that, as you mentioned, Alex, is I mean, she uploaded this guy's NBA Miami Heat basketball player. He lives in that building, his name, his personal email address, his personal cell, the dog's the dog's name. And what do we know a lot of times with passwords where they say, what's your pet's name? So she put that into the AI. And especially with the free version, what happens is they now take that to retrain the data. So later on, if you say, hey, what's the pet's name of this basketball player? Well, Shayla over here gave us the information, and it does little verifications and takes more than one source, but that's just the kind of item. There are also the paid version, which is better than the free version, but I always look at it where like behind their head, they're like crossing their fingers saying they're not going to sell your information. That's like Google saying, we're not going to sell any of the information in your emails, right? In your Gmail. But if you and I, Alex, we're talking about going fishing, and all of a sudden we're seeing fishing ads on our phone, it's like, wait, but what's going on here? So, I necessarily would not trust the fine print because they're somehow still using that a little. But it's just best practices, especially in the world that we're in, where residents are entrusting us with their personal information. That doesn't give us the right to now put that into any type of AI product.
And I'm gonna back to the Steve Jobs comment. I heard somebody say the other day, anything you wouldn't say out loud in public in a public space probably should not be typed into a free AI tool without understanding the privacy policy first. And even if you're paying for it, you really have to dig into the privacy policy and understand if they're using this data to build their models, right? If this data can then be used, in the future by someone else because it's now as part of their model. So make sure to read their privacy policies, and understand specifically that piece. If your data, the data you're feeding AI, is being used to train their models, and if there's an option to opt out, right? So that's very important as well. Most of these AI tools will provide an option to opt out, especially if you're paying. If it's free, I haven't seen one that provides you with that option. But
Right.
if you're paying for it, and then use the same skepticism, like as I mentioned earlier. When you're receiving data from AI, I catch myself receiving, data from AI that's not true, and then I have to tell it, this is not true, and they'll go back and they'll say, "Oh yes, I'm sorry, this is not true." So, but be very careful what you put in AI. If you don't have to, like I said, if you're not going to say it out loud in public, don't give it to AI, especially the free AI.
And
I
I have
agree. Sorry, Zulie, go ahead.
just one final question on my end, and actually, it's someone posted online, so thank you for that. Beyond reporting to the authorities, right? If someone is hacked, what should they do? Who should they report to, right? The question is, do you know if anything is being done to catch and prosecute the bad guys? But really, what, and where should they report if they are a victim of being hacked?
so as far as to catch and prosecute the bad guys, unfortunately, the majority of them are outside of the country with where they
Mm-hmm.
don't have relations with the US. So think of Iran and China and Russia and those countries and so forth like that. And as far as reporting,
Hard process right now, isn't it? It's
yeah, as far as reporting, yes, you can for the sake of having a police report and just saying because if it's a fraudulent purchase or something, you have something. But other than that, the FBI is not going to come and run to your door because you
right,
got, it's not going to work that way.
right.
So as far as who to call, as if your bank got hacked, of course you're calling your bank. Of course you're putting a credit freeze, which I think you should just, in my opinion, just do just because it's not every day you're buying a new car or a new boat. So with the credit freeze, whenever you do need to use your credit for something, you just call a day in
Right.
ahead, they unfreeze it for two days, and then they put it back.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead, Octavio.
No, I was gonna say, and then some traditional stuff that you can also, in addition to what Andre just mentioned, if it's your computer, yeah, all of these are all electronic devices, right? So disconnect, turn off, remove any kind of access until you understand exactly what's been impacted, why you're reaching out to the bank, why you're reaching out to, other entities. Disconnect the phone from Wi-Fi or from cellular, turn it off, temporarily. Um, Use another system to try to change your passwords, right? Don't use the one that you feel was hacked. Use your wives or husbands or boyfriends, girlfriends system to try to go in and change the passwords. Um, Disable any accounts that you feel were hacked. The credit piece that Andre mentioned is very important. And I also agree with Andre on the police report. If you feel you were hacked, you lose nothing by opening up a case with the police department. But I think the most important ones are, your email, your online banking and financial accounts, and then anywhere where you're storing a credit card. Very quickly try to change your passwords on those accounts, and as always, confirm that you have MFA enabled.
Okay.
Good. Yeah, I'm like a curious cat. So one of our clients sold his company to the Department of Defense, and one of the things that he told me is that he's like, I don't put anything in AI. They're just collecting all the data. It's just like I never did it in Google for years, and because it's just a learning tool, and if you want to protect a lot of your information, don't put your personal information into the search engines because it's learning, and they're going to use it later. They'll charge you to pay for privacy in the future if you want privacy. If not, it's knowledge. It's because it was free. You put it in there. Now they have it, right? So it'll in the future, you're going to be paying for your privacy of the information you put in there to try to, right? So it's kind of how you told me. Um, I had Octavia, I had a question. The NAP, isn't that where all the like government entities put their servers to? All that.
Correct. Correct.
So
Yep.
it's considered one of the safest.
One of
Uh,
the safe. There's only a certain amount of naps in the world,
okay,
so yeah, they've been increasing with time. But yeah, this one in particular, when it was first built, it was called the Nap of the Americas. It was the only one that was
okay.
connecting Latin America to the United States. Now there's
Yeah,
other
because somebody was
ones.
asking me, somebody was telling me on a text here, one of our board members, that the NAP is the safest place to be able to have your servers, and it's considered the
Yep.
top in the industry.
Yep.
Okay, good. Um, does anybody else have any questions out there they'd like to ask?
While we wait, Alex, I think because we're close to time,
No?
I just want to kind of recap and know that Octavio and Reggie did a wonderful job of giving us a very high level overview. I just want to say, really, from my perspective, is being mindful of the information we collect,
Mhm.
where we store it. I think for all of us, on a personal level and professionally and our associations, we should just really keep tighter controls, good policies where we're investing the time in training, where we invest the time and resources, and more importantly, partner with great professionals that can help us, whether it's a management company or IT solutions and support. Understand the technology that's around us and where the industry is going, tomorrow and the next day and the next day after that, because there's a lot of great technology out there that can help us evolve, and can also help secure us a little bit better. I don't think we can ever eliminate the exposure altogether, but we can help minimize it, if we're implementing the right solutions. So, with great partners, you can accomplish that. But training, support, communication, and good policies will help you get there. So, Alex, any questions that have come up online?
Well, I received a text here from one of our clients that they feel that they got hacked from a skimmer on their phone as they were walking through crowds. And
Mm.
skimmers out there with your Bluetooth, where they're able to pull information from your phone that connects. Is that something that we have to be careful with when we have our Apple Pay open or Bluetooth open and people can get into your phones and hack into it that way?
Yeah, it's a can of
Andre, are you?
worms. Yeah, that's a can of worms answer.
Okay.
Do we have
Yeah,
3 minutes for that?
yeah. There. Just make sure your phones are up to date. That's the
Yeah.
best.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that you have a password on your phone.
Hmm.
It's protected. Use all the different methods to protect your phone so that it's not easy for someone to walk around and skim the phone. Your phone is locked,
Okay.
yeah, that's not going to happen. But if it's not locked or if it has a very common 1 2 3 4 password or something to that extent, then yeah, then
You're
you're putting
exposing yourself.
yep.
I
Yeah,
understand.
he told me that he's bought one of those that cover the phone
Carry
signals, so
case.
that way
Yep.
nobody
Yep.
can skim him anymore because he
Hmm.
got skimmed and a bunch of information was
Good
pulled from
idea.
his phone. And he realized that when he looked that it was connected at that moment and
Mm.
something downloaded or access download or whatever it was. So interesting.
Down to two
Hey,
minutes, Alex.
we have 2 minutes here. So let's look at the couple questions here. I want to try to get in all. Thank you for the information. We'll make some improvements here. Great. Yeah, implement all these best practices, protect the data. Make sure you have a plan. That plan is so key. Make sure, your hardware and software is up to date. And what Octavia mentioned here is just go through the process and you'll learn, be able to, who you got to call. That's very important. You know, implement it in your lives. The 2MFA. I'm going to do that with everything I have. That's and have my family and everyone do the same thing here. Because data is so important. You need to protect it. Okay. And then Dave, that's a great recommendation. I like that. We can discuss that. Where you have a webinar on how HOAs can use social media to communicate with our residents. That's a great one, Dave. We'll put
I've
that in
written
the
it
notes
down.
here.
We'll
Yep,
follow
because
up.
there's a lot going on there, and there's a lot of changes happening there. So yes, we will have that discussion behind the scenes. Thank you for that. All right. On behalf of KWPMC and ARC Solvers, Andre and Octavio and Zuli, thank you everyone for joining us today. It was an amazing discussion. I could do this for another 2 hours because
Yeah.
I'm like a kid. I wrote down so many questions I didn't even get to it here, but maybe we'll do this next time. We'll go for round two.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you,
Everyone,
everyone.
thank you for joining us
Thank
today.
you.
Look forward to next month to our next webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.